Hey everybody, welcome back to Watch and Carry. So in today's video, I'm going to be doing another customer build. This one I haven't actually filmed before, so I wanted to capture this on camera for you guys. But this is going to come off of my sales page on Instagram. Check the details below if you'd like to see which kind of mods I'm selling. But this is going out to Felipe, who has purchased version A, which is going to be coming with two watches. And this is basically the Casio AE 1200 WHD-1A, which is that silver one here on the left. And we're also going to be using the AE 1300 WH AVCF, which is that gray black case on the right. And as you can see in these photos, these have already been done. So we're taking parts from each, kind of transplanting them, and then we're doing a few filter effects on both watches, and then a negative filter here on the bottom tine display for the AE 1200. So we're going to try to get these both done for him today. So taking a look at my work area, again, if you want to know what exactly I'm using or the names of the tools I'm using, check the description below. But this is kind of your basic setup. I've got an air blaster here, some super glue, some Hops number 9 lubricating oil, some Goo Gone, a couple Q-tips. I like to use these pointed Q-tips. Okay, got a nice silicone soldering work mat, which feels a little bit like rubber, but it's silicone. Nice grip, very soft. Got a long toothpick here. Another Q-tip that I like to keep upright, and I'll show you why later. We've got a guitar pick here and a pin. Okay, we're going to have a paper clip that's kind of bent like this. And then on the right side, you can see my other tools as well. So we have a pair of plastic tweezers, a lug removal tool, micro screwdriver, a brand new blade here on our hobby knife. Okay, and I've got a pair of scissors here off of my Victorinox. And then just a nice clean microfiber towel and a microfiber cloth. And of course, our watches here, which I've already went over with you. And then just make sure your hands are clean and as removed of oil as possible, because that can kind of transfer to the filters. And of course, our filters, which you're going to be using, again, check the description below for the exact name. But these are both Lee filters. I've got the blue here and the yellow. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to focus on is removing the bottom filter from the AE 1200. That's the Casio Royale, so that's going to be this guy right here. So take this apart. I like to keep this protective film on the resin display intact, and then we'll kind of open up the bracelet here. I'm going to take my lug removal tool. Let's get the brightness up a little bit here. There we go. Okay. And you'll go ahead and just go into your lugs and pop these guys off. All right, and just watch out because sometimes those spring bars can shoot out ahead of you. Nice thing about this tray, we have a little bin here to kind of keep our spare parts. You can set this bracelet to the side. Let's go ahead and grab our micro screwdriver and get these small screws in the back off. Perfect. Okay, and then you're gonna have these 4 screws. Just keep them in place on your work mat. So for me, I like to keep them here on these little troughs on the left. Great. Case back, set that guy to the side. All right, you have a small O-ring here. This is where my Hops number 9 oil comes in. So I'm going to set this guy off to the side, and that's already lubricated, but I will re-lubricate it again before reassembling. Okay, but check that for yourself when you're taking apart your watch, because you might have an older one that needs to be relubricated. Here's the internal watch module. We're going to be working on this. And then now that you have this part open here, what I'm going to do is take out the masking carefully with my lug tool. Be careful not to scratch the inside resin. or the inside plastic glass. Just kind of remove that part out. So to the side, take your case back and just loosely put it back on here and set this part out to the side, because these are the two things that we're going to be working on. Okay, so now that we've kind of removed those, we need to go to the next watch. Again, we're transplanting parts here. All right, there's that AE 1300. Kind of a cool design with those triple subdials on the top. Go ahead and open up the band. This one's a little bit easier to remove. Take your spring bars out. Set your band to the side. Same thing as the other watch. Get this case back open. Gently lift up there. Get our screws. These are the exact same size machine screws as you'll find on the AE 1200, so you can mix and match these with the other watch, no problem. Okay, go ahead and take our O-ring gently out. Same size O-ring. In fact, the two watches, the AE 1200 and 1300, pretty much exactly the same watch. The only difference is the layout of the display. And of course the bracelet and the color. But the bracelet size, the O-ring, the screws, the case back, except for the printing on the back of the case back, they're all interchangeable, which is why this mod is pretty easy. Okay, take the watch module out and again, gently lift up on the masking. Get that guy out as well. Replace the case back loosely and set that guy off to the side. All right, so now we've got our working parts here. So as you can see in the listing, I'm going to focus first on this part. So we're going to want to turn that negative part on this part into a inverse or negative display. So this is probably the trickiest part that you're going to have to do with this. Let's see if I can get focused here. There we go. Okay, so what we'll do is this watch module, I'll just gently set that off to the side along with our maskings. Okay, and with this I'm going to bring my microfiber cloth just because it's a little bit smoother for me to work on, especially when it comes to the liquids. It gives me something to kind of wipe my hands off of. You'll go ahead and take this, you will flip it over, take your spring bar tool, okay, and then on the sides here, I don't know if you can see this, let's see if I can zoom in even more. There we go. Actually flip it back over, you'll find one pin here at the 9 o'clock, another one here at the 3 o'clock, two here at 12 o'clock. Kind of push up on those, and then two here at the 6 o'clock. So just gently pry off on those, and you'll expose the internal parts of that. Okay. Right, then we're going to carefully remove this board here on the left side. Okay, and we will separate the components in here. Just make sure you set this off on a dry surface. Okay, and then on this we can just kind of lightly tap out. You're going to get this opaque piece that comes out like that. Okay, then you're going to go back to your masking here. Okay, and then put that on the top of that, just like that. Okay, Now, one thing I forgot to mention, you will need a Sharpie also, so I'm using a fine tip Sharpie here. Okay, now before we focus on this display, go back to this part here. And I want you to carefully look for a spring. Okay, so if you keep it in this orientation, you will notice that there is a spring right here. Okay, it's shown in silver. All right, so go ahead and take your Sharpie and just make a small mark to signify where that spring goes back, because that spring often pops out. So what I like to do is just remove it ahead of time like that. Lift up from the bottom with your finger, push up, and then take this spring and remove it out like that. Okay, and we'll put the spring here in our trough and set that guy to the side, and then that whole part we can set to the side as well. Okay. All right, now with our watch module in place, you'll go ahead and make a couple lines here so we know where to cut exactly. So again, keeping the masking on, make sure it sits flush. Usually you can feel the masking fall into the grooves of the white plastic. And then once you feel like it's in place, you can go ahead and make a Sharpie mark to the right of this silver dot and to the left of this silver dot. And basically what we're going to do is connect the two dots afterwards with a line, and that's going to tell us where we need to cut. So I go to this silver dot here on the right side, just underneath the light button. Okay, I'm going to hold my masking in place, follow that silver dot to the side, and make a small Sharpie mark here. Kind of like that. Okay, then I'm going to go to the other side. Do the same thing, follow that silver dot, go to the other side, and see where you would make that Sharpie mark on that side as well. Okay, this is really important that you get it lined up right, because you don't want to cut too high, because your cut line might show up here in the subdials. Too low, your cut line will show up in the main display. So you want your cut line to be between these two silver dots, because then it will be blocked by this countdown timer printed plastic on the masking. Okay, now once you've made your two dots on the side, you can go ahead and set that masking to the side. Let's look at this black Sharpie mark that we've made here on this side. And now I want to draw it and extend that line into the main time like that. Okay, and then I will make a mark on the actual glass like that. That's my first Sharpie mark. Repeat the same thing here. Find that Sharpie mark you made, extend that line inward, and again make your Sharpie mark right there. So now we have two dots, one to the top and one to the bottom. Take my masking back and just kind of double check to make sure that this invisible line between these silver dots is blocking those two Sharpie marks. Okay, before I cut. So that looks good. Okay, so go slow with this part. This, you want to make sure you get your measurements right before you start doing any cutting. Okay, now that we've made those marks, we can remove the display gently. So what you'll do here, let me put it back actually, is you'll turn this over, or you can hold it like this, and you'll notice I have my three dots to the top, to the right, and blank to the bottom. What you can do is on the bottom here, go ahead and pull back with your middle finger on a spring that's located here on the back. Just kind of pull in this direction like that and lift up on your display, and it will pop off like so. Sometimes what will happen is you'll get these two pieces. They look like very thin pieces of foam that will fall out. These are extremely important. Somebody told me the names of these, and I'll have to go back to my other video again to recheck the names, but these are extremely important. Your display, when you reassemble the watch, will not work well if you get these incorrectly installed. So be careful with these. I don't think it's a good idea to fold them, obviously, so just set them gently to the side. I'll put them there in my trough, and then our plastic housing here we can set to the side as well, because we're just going to be working on this main part. Okay, now what we'll do is, I always forget another piece of material to use. We're going to grab some Painter's tape. I like to use painter's tape because it does not leave a residue. Take a long enough piece to traverse the length of this glass, and I will put this tape, move my display a little bit there. I will go ahead and put this tape in such a way that it connects those two black lines together. So just like okay, just like that. Okay, and I'll take my masking again, kind of put it over to make sure. Yep, that looks good to me. Make sure that it's in line. Once that's in line, what you can do is take your Sharpie again. And now you can extend the line along the border of that tape. If you want, you can put a straight edge here on the tape. The tape not only helps to connect the dots, but also helps to protect the glass underneath the bottom. Okay. Perfect. All right. Now, what we'll do after that is grab another piece of tape, again, about the length of the glass. Set that to the side, and this time I'm going to put this on the top. And then take off the one on the bottom there. Okay. All right, and there's our line that we've drawn, which is exactly where we're going to be cutting across. Okay, so I'll set that there. Okay, I'm going to go back to my silicone pad because I like to have a little bit of grip while cutting, and the silicone pad has a nice grip. We will go ahead and take our hobby knife here. Again, use a brand new blade. Obviously, it's not only easier to use a brand new blade, but safer. You know, it's more dangerous to use a knife that is not sharp. So we'll put this guy over here. Okay, firmly hold that in place. And we will go ahead and run our hobby knife along that Sharpie line. Okay, you can again hold here on the tape. Go very slow. Don't push too hard, just nice, firm, steady pressure all the way across. Okay, and make sure you get all the way to the edge because you want that whole piece of glass on the bottom, which is this whole piece, to remove off nice and clean. We're going to repeat that same cut. Okay, again, applying a little bit more pressure, and now a little bit more pressure. Just keep working at it. Now, it's hard for me to tell you how far to go, so I think this is number 4, number 5 now. Just count how many times I'm going through this, and you can copy that. So this might be my 5th cut, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. You'll notice that each time I'm going through, it's a little bit easier for me to move the blade because you're basically making a score line for your blade to track into. And that score line is kind of like creating a perforated edge on a piece of binder paper. It's going to make it much neater to tear, so to speak, the bottom glass right there. So I've done about 10 cuts in one direction. I like to go ahead and cut in the opposite direction too. Okay. So we'll go ahead and just hold here this time. And do the same thing again. Go around along that same line that you just made. 10 times. 5. Then lastly, I like to take my blade and kind of run back and forth like this. It's going to track along that score line nicely, and this will just help to further perforate that edge that you're going to break the display along. Again, go all the way to the edge. The edges are often the most difficult part. Sometimes what I have to do is re-hold my blade like this and then kind of do it like that to make sure it gets cut. Okay, so that's pretty good. We'll go ahead and take back our hobby knife there. Now we'll take another piece of painter's tape, put that right over where you just cut, and gently lift up on just that piece you applied. What we're trying to do is remove as much of that cut material debris as possible. Just makes for a cleaner environment, and also prevents you from rubbing those sharp fine pieces of almost like sand-like material into the top of the display. Okay, you can throw that away. All right, so we have that now to the side. What we're going to do next is remove the bottom. So we'll take our towel, place that back, and I'm going to use the back of this because it's a little finer. We're going to get our glue gun. I'm going to grab some Q-tips, and I like to pre-soak my Q-tips. So I'm going to put 3 of them there, 4, let them soak. All right, then we're going to go to our display here, and we're also going to get our pin. Okay, now you're going to apply a thin layer of Goo Gone to the edges here. So that edge, and that edge. Okay, now let that sit for a few minutes. Let the Goo Gone do its thing. The Goo Gone helps to kind of loosen and emulsify, is that the right word? Or no, not emulsify, coagulate the glue that's holding that display. So while that's sitting, which I would recommend for about 2 to 3 minutes, I'll kind of explain what's happening with this display. So the best way to look at this display is it's laying flat on my towel. So picture my 3 fingers here on the right as this display, okay? Now if we go ahead and turn the display this way, like this, okay, now what we can see is that there are 3 layers, 1, 2, and 3, okay? So we are working on the top layer, okay? And what we're essentially doing is removing the top layer and keeping the bottom 2 layers from this half of the glass, this bottom portion of the glass, okay? Now, when we remove this top layer, which is a factory polarized filter, if I was to reassemble the watch, you wouldn't see anything on the bottom of this display. You need that polarized filter to bring the numerals into visibility. So what would happen is if I remove this polarized filter from the top and I reassemble the watch and just crudely put it back on top, you would be able to see those numbers again. Okay, now if I put it back on top, the polarized filter I just removed, and rotated it, I believe it's 90 degrees, you would get a negative display effect. And I'll show you that more when I cut my polarized film. So if I remove this top filter, rotate it 90 degrees, and put it back, I would get a negative display on the watch. So why not just use the factory polarized filter I just cut and put it back on the watch? Well, when you remove it, the glue gets very gummy, and it's impossible to remove that gum and allow the filter to stick back in place. You essentially need to replace this polarized filter that you've cut because now it's become dirty and unclean. So I remove this top layer of polarized filter. I take a brand new polarized filter, put it back, but rotate it 90 degrees and then stick it onto the display, and that's how you get that negative effect. So I'm hoping that makes sense to you guys. That being said, again, while we're waiting for this Goo Gone to work its magic there, you can get a negative display effect on the AE 1200 as well. You can get that negative display effect on the analog clock, the main time display, and this part here that shows the day, date, as well as the alarm signal here on the top. But when it comes to the map, it does not work that way. If I was to remove just this portion of polarized filter from the map, and then rotate it 90 degrees and put it back with a brand new polarized filter, the entire thing would be blacked out. The only thing that would pop up as white to get that effect would be the region that you've selected here on the map. So you would just have, for example, if I did the North American region or Pacific Coast Time region, you would have this bright silvery yellow color of graphic showing here on the map, but the rest of the map would be completely blacked out. You wouldn't see it. Some people like that. They like a stealth appearance. I personally don't recommend making the map negative because you lose the entire map graphic, which I think adds a little bit of character and charm to the watch. So just to let you know, on the AE 1300, like this one I'm wearing right here, which I've modified, you can remove the top and the bottom polarized factory filter, replace them both, and you can still get that negative effect where you have the black background and the yellowish whitish numerals that pop up, or the black background here with the whitish indices that would pop up. On this watch, by the way, I do not have a negative on the top. It's just standard with a yellow filter, and on the bottom, I've done that inverse filter. Okay, so just for your information there. All right, so now that that is in place, it's kind of been sitting for a while. Set our Goo to the side. We're going to take our display, and you're going to take your pin, and you're going to kind of start here in the middle. It's okay if you scratch this glass because we are removing it, and just kind of drag it slowly to the right and wait for a click. Can you hear that? Let me see if I can bring it up to the camera so you can hear. So listen for the click. Okay, right now where it has clicked, I am exactly between, again, we're going to our 3 layers here. I'm exactly between the top polarized filter and the middle filter. I'm basically right here. And that's the good place where we want to separate that apart. Okay, so that's how you know you're in the right layer to separate. Drag that pin off to the side, click, and that's how you know you're going to be removing this part off. So again, we'll do it again. Okay, I'm in the right place. We're going to go back down, and we're just going to push in gently, but watch your fingers. You don't want to push in the direction of your fingers. I'm going to push in gently with the pin. Okay. Sometimes what you can do is you can also get it from the top. There we go. And so now we've inserted the pin just like that. There you go. Okay, what I'll do is I will insert the pin just a little bit more, rotate the pin left and right. Obviously, don't rotate the pin inward because you don't want to damage the display below. Left and right. Okay, then I'll take this pin out, and I'll grab my guitar pick, and I'll stick it in the exact same place my pin was. Like that. Okay, and then we'll slowly just work away at this filter to kind of loosen it up. And you will see that the filter gets pretty cloudy, which again is that glue that's coming up. So that one I kind of chipped a little bit, so I'm gonna have to do this again on this side. Okay, again. Okay, we've inserted our pin there. Okay, then I'll go ahead and take my guitar pick and slowly work at this edge here. Okay, just glide the pick back and forth just like that. Okay, now you'll go ahead and do the whole entire bottom. You can get this off in one piece, it's obviously best. There we go. And then now that I've got these 2 sides down, work your way to the top where the tape is, but you'd want to stop just before you get to the tape line. So I would keep working it, working it, working it, and then right below the tape I would stop, okay, because you don't want to accidentally remove some of the display from the top layer, which we're keeping. And you can see that as I'm removing this bottom layer, it gets very gummy. So even if you just lifted up a small portion of that display on the top here that you're keeping, you would get this gummed out look, which would mean now we would have to change the entire display. It would be possible. You can just put a brand new polarized film on the top too, but if we can preserve the top, that would be best. So polarized film is not expensive, but it's also not cheap. It also takes a while to order, so that's why I try to preserve as much of my polarized film as possible. Okay, but again, if you accidentally mess up, you could just remove this entire polarized layer off the whole thing, the top, the bottom, and the top, and just put a new one on the top and put a new one on the bottom, but orient the one on the bottom 90 degrees. Okay, so now that I've kind of loosened that up, you can see here I just stopped right before the score line. So you can see my glue line here, and I'm stopping right before here. And what I'll do is I'll go to one edge here on the top, okay, and I'll just slightly work at it. And what I want to look for is I want to make sure that this polarized film that I'm removing is starting to tear neatly along that line here that I've scored. Okay, so I'm going to gently rub this here, and look at that. Perfect. It's kind of breaking along it. Okay, so now I can go ahead and run this all the way through from right to left. If I started putting my guitar pick here and this film was not breaking away cleanly, like it was too difficult, or I started to feel like I was taking not only this bottom polarized film off, but also the top, stop, okay? Stop, take the guitar pick out, take your hobby knife again, rescore your line on the same cut place that you did before, and then try the guitar pick again, okay? So we'll go ahead and move this all the way across. And it should be nice and smooth if you've made a nice clean cut, just like that. That was probably the best one I've done so far. Okay, and there's our polarized film. Okay, and we'll save that because I'm going to show you what we're going to do with that later. Okay, so now you can see that this material here, especially if I remove the towel, okay, can you kind of see that? There you go. See how it's really gummy? That's all the glue that was holding that polarized film in place. We need to remove that glue. So work over your towel. Get your Q-tips again. And we're going to put a nice layer of Goo Gone over this part. Okay, just nice and easy. I'm not even rubbing too much at the moment. I'm just applying a nice, generous coating of Goo Gone here. And you'll already start to notice that the glue residue will start to clump together. It'll start to coagulate. And that's the Goo Gone working its magic there. All right, I'm going to pause the video here. I would recommend you let that sit for 5 to 10 minutes. The longer, the better. And then that'll make it easier to rub off with minimal pressure on the display. So I'll check back with you guys. All right, so that's been sitting for about 5 minutes. We'll take our saturated Q-tip in the Goo Gone, and we'll start going in circular patterns here, circular motions. And you can see that the glue is starting to clump together there, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. Okay, once you feel like you've got a decent amount of clumps there, go ahead and throw away that Q-tip and take your clean cloth here, or your clean towel, and wipe off that extra, like that. Take another Q-tip, brand new one, soaked again. Reapply the Goo Gone, circular motions. All right, now you want to keep doing this until you have no more clumps showing. Sometimes what you'll notice is as you start getting below the glue to the actual naked display, you'll hear squeaky marks, kind of like rubbing like a towel on a very clean window. that's kind of telling you you're pretty much almost done already. Before I pause the video here, because I'm going to save on time here, because this can take about 10 to 15 minutes. Some people have said, while I'm waiting for that, can I start working on the filters? Yeah, absolutely, you can start doing on that. I like to do it separate because sometimes with Goo Gone, even if you wash your hands, you still have a little bit of oily residue. So I don't like to touch my filters unless I'm sure I'm done with the Goo Gone completely. Then before I work on the filters, I'll really spend a lot of time washing my hands, getting them as clean as possible with all this Goo Gone removed. And that way I don't kind of contaminate the filters. If you do get Goo Gone on the filters, you could wipe it away, but it becomes a little messy. You see some streak marks and it just makes cleanup a little bit harder. Okay, so I'll pause here. Again, Goo Gone, circular motions. You see a lot of clumps, throw away that Q-tip, wipe off those clumps, get another Q-tip with Goo Gone. All right, guys, I'll pause here. Okay, I feel like I've removed a good amount of the Goo Gone here, but one way to check also besides just the clumps is kind of turn your filter in the light. And if you can still see, like right there, I can see some streaks there, some streaks here along the cut line. Okay, so it's not completely clean. That's another way to check if you still have excess glue you need to remove. Okay, one other thing I'd like to mention, obviously use both ends of your Q-tips so you don't waste them. So I have 3 brand new Q-tips here. Only one end has been soaking, so I'll take one. Do as usual like we just mentioned. Okay, then I will take the dry end, invert it, put it on the other side of my tray and let that soak. Wipe. Take one from the left, apply. Dry end, invert down into the Goo Gone, put it on the other side of my bowl, wipe, same thing again. And then now, while the first one was sitting and allowing the Goo Gone to saturate the tip, it's now ready for me to go. So now I pick up this one, apply. Okay, both ends have been used, so I can throw that away. Wipe. Wipe with a different part of the cloth, by the way, every now and then, so you can get a fresh towel onto that display. Repeat. Just one of those things that after you do this for a while, you learn some time-saving techniques. Not a big deal if you don't do this, but definitely want to use both sides of those Q-tips. These fine tip Q-tips are a little bit more expensive than standard Q-tips you can get at your drugstore or grocery. So I like to max. Perfect. Can you hear that squeaking sound here? Here, let's get a fresh Q-tip again. Just put 2 this time because we're towards the end here. Let it soak for a bit. Okay, and let's listen for that squeaking. Okay, maybe not so much yet. That means we still have a little bit of glue. Okay, lift up on my display, turn it in the light, and I can still see I've got a fair amount of glue on the bottom of the display. Focus there. The score line here on the top also tends to accumulate some glue, so don't forget that part as well. Okay, oh, that was good. That got quite a bit of it off. I have a little bit more here on the left side. There you go. I'm sure you heard that. That kind of tells me I'm right on the bare display, which means quite a bit of glue has already been removed from this entire spot, and we're almost done. And then here on the bottom, you'll notice not a lot of squeaking because that's where I saw in the light that I had a fair amount of glue left. Okay.